Scene opens in a middle school hallway during lunchtime. Students chatter, lockers slam shut, and laughter echoes through the halls. The camera focuses on Jackson, a 13-year-old boy with an arrogant smirk, walking confidently with his group of friends. His body language is cocky, and he enjoys being the center of attention. Nearby, a quiet boy named Malik, who is black, is standing by his locker, minding his own business. The incident. Jackson, mocking tone. Hey Malik, nice shoes. Did you pick those up from a thrift store, or did your ancestors hand them down to you? His friends laugh. Malik tightens his grip on his books, but doesn't respond. Jackson, pressing on, looking to his friends for approval. Bet your dad's in jail, huh? Or, wait, do you even know who he is? Laughter erupts again, but a few kids in the background look uncomfortable. Malik's jaw clenches, but he remains silent. He's heard it all before. He sighs and slams his locker shut, walking away without a word. The school's response. A teacher, Ms. Daniels, a strict but fair woman in her 40s, witnesses the interaction. She steps forward, arms crossed, her sharp eyes locking onto Jackson. Ms. Daniels, firmly. Jackson Carter. My office. Now. Jackson scoffs, rolling his eyes, but follows her. His friends whisper behind him, some amused, some uneasy. Cut to the principal's office. Jackson slouches in his chair, arms crossed, as Principal Stevenson, a tall, serious black man in his late 50s, sits behind his desk. Principal Stevenson, calm but authoritative. Jackson, do you have any idea how serious this is? Jackson shrugs, avoiding eye contact. It was just a joke. Principal Stevenson, leaning forward, voice measured but firm. It wasn't a joke to Malik. And it's not a joke to me. Jackson shifts in his seat. For the first time, he looks slightly uncomfortable. Principal Stevenson, you're suspended for 3 days. I'll be speaking with your parents. And when you return, you'll be attending sensitivity training with Ms. Daniels. Jackson's face hardens. He's never been punished like this before. Jackson, muttering. This is stupid. I didn't even say anything that bad. Principal Stevenson, coldly. You don't think it's bad because you've never had to experience it. But you will learn, Jackson, one way or another. Cut to Jackson storming out of the office, furious. His mother, Emily Carter, a busy working woman in her late 30s, arrives at the school, looking both frustrated and embarrassed. Emily, low voice, scolding him as they walk to the car. Jackson, what were you thinking? Jackson, defensive. It was just a joke. People are so sensitive these days. Emily shakes her head, but something about her expression suggests she's troubled. As they drive home in silence, the camera lingers on her thoughtful face. Jackson stares out the window, sulking. The screen fades to black. Background and setting. The next scene opens in Jackson's home. It's a modest suburban house with a cozy but slightly outdated feel. His father, Mark, a factory worker in his 40s, sits at the dinner table, shaking his head as he reads an email from the school. Mark, frowning at Jackson. Racial bullying? Seriously? What the hell, Jackson? Jackson, crossing his arms. It's not a big deal. Mark, firmly. Well, it is now. You're grounded. No phone, no video games. Jackson, fuming. This is so unfair. Emily sighs, watching the exchange with a complicated expression. She bites her lip as if hesitating to say something. She finally looks at Mark. Emily, softly. Mark, maybe it's time he learns. Jackson looks between them, confused. Jackson, learns what? Mark's face darkens. He exhales deeply and sets down his fork. Mark, grimly. Your history. Jackson frowns, completely unaware of what his father means. The camera lingers on his confused expression as Emily and Mark exchange a look, as if deciding whether they're ready for this conversation. The screen fades to black, hooking the audience. The script now hints at an upcoming revelation. The audience knows that Jackson is about to discover something shocking about his own family's past, something that will challenge his beliefs and force him to confront his actions. The tension has been built, the stakes established, and the emotional weight of his bullying has been clearly felt. The story is now primed for deeper exploration. The scene opens in Jackson's bedroom. He sits on his bed, arms crossed, still sulking. The glow from his turned-off TV reflects on his face. His phone sits on his nightstand, but he knows he can't use it, grounded. Frustration bubbles in his chest. Why was everyone making such a big deal about this? It was just a joke. Malik wasn't even that upset. Or was he? Jackson shakes his head, refusing to entertain the thought. Suddenly, there's a knock on his door. His mother, Emily, steps inside, holding a worn-out shoebox. She looks uncertain, as if she's debating whether this is the right time. She sits on the edge of his bed, sighing. A family secret begins to unfold. Emily, softly. Jackson, you don't really know much about our family history, do you? Jackson scoffs. What does that have to do with anything? Emily, holding up the shoebox. More than you think. She opens the box, revealing old photographs, yellowed letters, and a few rusted military dog tags. Jackson peers inside, uninterested at first. He pulls out a faded black and white photo of a young man in a military uniform. His brow furrows. Jackson, curious despite himself. Who's this? Emily, gently. That's your great-grandfather. Henry Carter. Jackson shrugs. Okay. And Emily, choosing her words carefully. He fought in World War II. But there's more to his story than that. He wasn't just any soldier, Jackson. He was part of the all-black 761st Tank Battalion. Jackson frowns, processing the words. Jackson, confused. Wait, he was black. Emily doesn't answer right away. Instead, she reaches into the box and pulls out an old letter. The paper is fragile, the ink slightly smudged. She hands it to Jackson. He hesitates before taking it, his fingers brushing against the rough edges. The truth begins to challenge him. As Jackson reads, his expression slowly changes. The letter, dated 1944, is from Henry Carter to his family. In it, Henry describes the discrimination he faced, not just from enemies, but from fellow American soldiers. He talks about fighting for a country that didn't see him as an equal. He describes the heartbreak of returning home and still being treated like a second-class citizen. Jackson's grip on the letter tightens. He looks up at his mother, his voice quieter now. Jackson, but we're not black. Emily, softly. Not now? But we were. Silence stretches between them. Jackson shakes his head. Jackson, defensive. No, that doesn't make sense. Grandpa Mark isn't black. Emily nods. He's mixed. His father, Henry, was black. But back then, a lot of mixed-race families, especially ones who could pass as white, chose to hide their heritage. It was easier, safer. Jackson stares at her, struggling to process this. His whole identity suddenly feels shaken. Jackson, muttering. So what? Does that mean I'm black too? Emily, carefully. It means you have black ancestry. It means the very people you think you're better than, they're part of your own bloodline. Jackson swallows hard, his fingers gripping the letter. His stomach churns. He wants to argue, but how can he? This isn't a lecture. It's a fact. A documented, undeniable fact. And it makes him uncomfortable in a way he's never felt before. Internal conflict begins to grow. The next day, Jackson returns to school, still rattled. His friends greet him, slapping him on the back. Ryan, grinning. Man, I can't believe they actually suspended you. Over what? Some dumb joke. Jackson, distracted, mutters. Yeah, stupid. But for the first time, Jackson doesn't feel the same confidence in his words. His friends start cracking jokes again, this time about another student. Usually, Jackson would join in. But now, the words don't feel as funny anymore. They feel cruel. Wrong. He shoves his hands into his pockets, staring at the floor. Later that day, he sees Malik sitting alone at lunch. Normally, Jackson wouldn't give it a second thought. But now, he feels something nagging at him, a sense of guilt. He approaches hesitantly. Jackson awkwardly clears throat. Hey. Malik looks up, skeptical. Jackson has never spoken to him without a sneer before. Malik, flatly. What do you want? Jackson shifts uncomfortably. Nothing. Just, sitting here. Malik studies him, then shakes his head. Malik, you're only here 'cause you got in trouble. Jackson opens his mouth to argue but stops. He exhales, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, maybe. There's a beat of silence. Jackson fidgets, unsure what to say next. He's never had to actually talk to Malik, only at him. Now, faced with the opportunity, he realizes how little he actually knows about him. Jackson, finally, hesitantly. Hey, I learned something about my family. Malik, raises an eyebrow, unimpressed. Good for you. Jackson takes a deep breath. No, I mean my great-grandfather. He was black. Malik blinks, caught off guard. Malik, what? Jackson nods, playing with the hem of his sleeve, staring at his tray. Jackson, quietly. I didn't know until yesterday. My mom told me. Malik studies him, skeptical. Malik, testing him. And Jackson doesn't have an answer. Not yet. But for the first time in his life, he isn't speaking just to be heard. He's speaking because he's searching for something. Understanding, maybe. The scene lingers on the uncertainty in his expression, the weight of the knowledge settling over him like an unfamiliar coat. Tension rises. That night, Jackson lies in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind races. His whole life, he saw the world one way, black and white, us and them. Now it's not so simple. And the worst part? He doesn't know how to feel about it. He turns onto his side, eyes fixed on the shoebox of family history sitting on his desk. Hesitating for a moment, he finally reaches for another letter and begins to read. The screen fades to black. The scene opens in Jackson's bedroom. It's late at night, the glow of a bedside lamp casting long shadows. He sits cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by old photos and letters from the shoebox. His hands shake slightly as he picks up another letter, unfolding it with careful fingers. The paper is delicate, almost brittle, as if holding too tightly might erase the words written decades ago. Unraveling the past. The letter is dated March 1945. It's from Henry Carter, Jackson's great-grandfather, addressed to his wife, written while he was stationed in Germany. Letter voiceover, Henry Carter. Asterisk, my dearest Eleanor. I hope this letter finds you well. The war has taken a toll on all of us, but not in the way you'd expect. You see, the Germans aren't the only ones who treat us differently. Our own men do too. Every day, we fight for a country that still won't fight for us. I watch white soldiers come home to parades, to cheers and gratitude. But I know that when I return, there will be no such welcome for men like me. I think about our son, our future, and I wonder, will he face the same struggles? Or will things change by then? Will he have to prove himself twice as much, work twice as hard, just to be seen as equal? Sometimes I dream of a different life, one where I don't have to hide who I am just to survive. Would it be easier, Eleanor, if our son could live as a white man? Would it spare him the pain I carry? I don't know the answer, but I do know this. No matter what happens, I pray he never forgets where he came from, who he is, who we are. Jackson's fingers tighten around the letter. His chest feels heavy. His great-grandfather, he was ashamed or scared? Jackson isn't sure, but for the first time, he feels something he's never felt before, a connection. He reaches for his phone, hesitates. He's still grounded, but then unlocks it anyway. He quickly types, 761st Tank Battalion, and hits search. His screen floods with black and white photos of African-American soldiers in uniform, standing proudly next to tanks, rifles slung over their shoulders. He reads article after article, stories of their bravery, their struggles, their sacrifices. The more he reads, the more his stomach churns. These were his ancestors. And yet, he'd spent his life making jokes about people who looked like them. A shift in perspective. The next morning, Jackson's mother finds him at the kitchen table, still reading. His eyes are tired, but he looks different, quieter, thoughtful. Emily, surprised. You're up early. Jackson, muttering, still staring at the screen. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Emily pours herself coffee, watching him closely. She notices the history page open on his laptop. Emily, softly. You read about them? Jackson nods slowly. Yeah, I had no idea. A beat of silence. Then, cautiously, Jackson asks something he never thought he'd ask. Jackson, why didn't Grandpa Mark ever tell me? Why did he just pretend we weren't? He can't even say it. Black. The word feels foreign on his tongue when talking about himself. Emily, sighing, stirring her coffee. It wasn't pretending, Jackson. It was survival. Back then, being black wasn't just about identity. It was about how the world treated you. And sometimes, it was easier to be someone else. Jackson frowns. He doesn't like that answer. He doesn't like that his family had to hide. It makes him uncomfortable, but for the first time, it's the right kind of uncomfortable. The kind that makes him want to know more. A confrontation at school. Later that day, Jackson walks into school. His friends, Ryan, Blake, and Caleb, are waiting for him by the lockers. They greet him with smirks. Ryan, grinning, elbowing him. Sup, racist. A confrontation at school. Later that day, Jackson walks into school. His friends, Ryan, Blake, and Caleb, are waiting for him by the lockers. They greet him with smirks. Ryan, grinning, elbowing him. Sup, racist. Jackson stiffens. Blake, laughing. Yeah, man, how's the re-education going? Caleb, mockingly serious. Did your mom make you write an essay about why you love all people equally? They all chuckle, expecting Jackson to laugh along, but he doesn't. Something about the way they're talking, so casual, so careless, it doesn't sit right anymore. He swallows hard, shifting uncomfortably. Jackson muttering. That's not what happened. Ryan furrows his brows, catching the hesitation in Jackson's tone. Ryan, squinting. What's with you? Jackson, tensing. Nothing. Blake, leaning against the lockers, smirking. Come on, don't tell me they actually got to you. Ryan, scoffing. Man, don't turn into one of those people. It was just a joke. Malik's fine. He should toughen up. Jackson opens his mouth to agree, like he always does, but something stops him. A voice in the back of his mind. His great-grandfather's words in that letter. I pray he never forgets where he came from. Who he is. Who we are. His jaw tightens. For the first time, he really sees his friends for who they are, not just as classmates, but as people who've never had to think twice about the things they say. The things he used to say. Jackson, quietly but firmly. It wasn't just a joke. Silence. The group stares at him. Ryan blinks, looking at Jackson as if he doesn't recognize him. Ryan, scoffing, disbelieving. You're kidding, right? Jackson shakes his head. His heart is pounding. He's never stood up to his friends before. But right now, something inside him won't let him back down. Jackson, voice stronger. I'm serious. I was wrong. And so are you. The tension is thick. Ryan lets out a short, incredulous laugh. Ryan, sarcastic. Oh, so what, you're woke now? Jackson exhales sharply, frustrated. He doesn't know what he is, but he knows he's not this anymore. He shakes his head, stepping back. Jackson, resolute. I gotta go. He turns and walks away, leaving his friends standing there, confused and annoyed. But for the first time, Jackson doesn't care what they think. A conversation that changes everything. Later that day, Jackson finds himself outside the library, pacing. He's about to do something he's never done before. Apologize. He takes a deep breath, then walks inside. Malik is at a table near the window, eating a snack while flipping through a textbook. Jackson hesitates, then slowly walks up. Jackson clears throat. Hey. Malik looks up, immediately wary. He closes his book slowly. Malik, flatly. What do you want? Jackson shifts his weight, feeling awkward. He's never had to admit he was wrong before. He doesn't even know how to start. Finally, he just says it. Jackson, quietly, but sincerely. I was a jerk. And I'm sorry. Malik raises an eyebrow, clearly not expecting that. Malik, skeptical. For what? Jackson, swallowing hard. For everything. The joke. The way I treated you. The way I saw you. Malik studies him for a long moment. He doesn't say anything right away, letting Jackson squirm under the weight of his own words. Malik, finally calmly. Why the change of heart? Jackson hesitates. How does he even explain? That he just found out his own great-grandfather was black? That he spent his whole life thinking a certain way, only to realize he was completely wrong? That he doesn't even know who he is anymore? Jackson, softly. I learned something about my family. About myself. And it made me realize I never actually knew what I was talking about. Malik nods slowly, still watching him carefully. Malik, testing him. So what? You expect me to just forgive you because you figured out black people are real people? Jackson exhales. He deserves that. Jackson, shaking head. No, I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know. Malik stares at him a little longer. Then, finally, he shrugs, picking up his book again. Malik, casually. All right. Jackson, blinking, confused. All right. Malik, glancing up, smirking slightly. You said what you needed to say, and I heard you. Now let's see if you actually mean it. Jackson nods slowly, understanding what Malik is really saying. Words are one thing. Actions are another. He takes a deep breath and sits down across from Malik, a quiet determination settling over him. If he's going to change, he has to prove it. The camera lingers on the two of them sitting at the same table, once divided by hate. now cautiously bridging a gap. The screen fades to black. 1 week later, the camera opens on a bright morning at school. Jackson walks through the hallway alone, no longer surrounded by Ryan, Blake, and Caleb. Since standing up to them, things have changed. His old friends barely talk to him anymore. He feels the difference, like he's an outsider in his own world. But instead of feeling angry, Jackson feels relieved. For once, he isn't pretending to be someone he's not. Breaking old patterns. At lunch, Jackson sits down at a table by himself. He watches his former friends laughing at another kid, a younger boy wearing secondhand clothes. The same type of cruelty Jackson once found funny now makes his stomach twist. He clenches his jaw, torn between staying quiet and doing something. Finally, he stands up and walks over. Ryan, grinning as he nudges Blake. "Man, did you see those shoes? Straight out of a dumpster." Jackson takes a deep breath and speaks up. Jackson, firmly. "Leave him alone." Ryan freezes, surprised. The smile fades from his face. Ryan, scoffing. "What's your problem, man? You too good for jokes now." Jackson, staring him down. "No, I'm just done with your garbage." The words hang in the air. Students nearby glance over, sensing the tension. For the first time, Ryan doesn't seem so sure of himself. Ryan, snarling. "Whatever. Go sit with your new friends." Jackson doesn't respond. He turns and walks away, shoulders squared, heart pounding. As he passes the younger boy, he gives him a small nod, repairing what was broken. Later that day, Jackson finds Malik sitting outside near the basketball court. Malik is practicing his free throws, the sound of the ball echoing softly. Jackson hesitates before walking over and picking up a stray ball. Jackson, casually. "You play every day?" Malik doesn't look at him as he lines up another shot. Malik. "Yeah. Keeps me out of trouble." A beat of silence. Then Jackson speaks again. Jackson, quietly. "I meant it, you know. What I said last week." Malik catches his own rebound and finally turns to face Jackson. His expression is unreadable. "Malik, so why are you still here?" Jackson shrugs, unsure how to explain it all. Jackson, "Because I don't want to be that guy anymore." Malik studies him for a long moment. Finally, he bounces the ball toward Jackson. Malik, "All right, Carter. Let's see if you can shoot." A small smile creeps onto Jackson's face as he catches the ball and lines up a shot. The tension between them softens, not friendship yet, but something closer to understanding. The ball swishes through the net, confronting the past. That evening, Jackson sits at the kitchen table with his mom and dad. The shoebox is in the center, its contents scattered across the surface. Jackson has been reading every letter, absorbing every detail of his great-grandfather's life. Tonight, he wants to know more. Jackson, curiously, "Why did no one tell me sooner?" His father, Mark, sighs. His face is lined with guilt and something deeper, shame. Mark, softly, "I didn't know how to tell you. My father, your grandpa, he wanted to protect us. He thought if we didn't talk about it, we could just live easier." Jackson frowns, trying to understand. Jackson, "But it's part of who we are." Emily smiles faintly, pride glimmering in her eyes. Emily, "And now you know. And that means you can carry it forward." Jackson looks down at a photograph of Henry Carter. For the first time, he feels connected, not just to his family, but to the truth. Taking action. The next day at school, an assembly is held for Black History Month. Students shuffle into the auditorium, chatting and joking. But Jackson sits quietly in the third row, his hands resting on a crumpled paper. He's about to do something that terrifies him, speak in front of everyone. When Principal Stevenson calls his name, Jackson stands up and approaches the microphone. The murmuring crowd grows quiet as he takes a deep breath and begins to speak. Jackson, steady voice. "A few weeks ago, I did something I'm not proud of. I hurt someone with my words, someone who didn't deserve it. And I thought it was funny, because I didn't know any better. But I've learned something since then. And today, I want to share it with you." The crowd is silent. Jackson glances toward Malik, who watches with his arms crossed, waiting. Jackson continues. "My great-grandfather, Henry Carter, was a soldier in World War II. He was part of the 761st Tank Battalion, the first black armored unit to fight in combat. He risked his life for a country that didn't always treat him like he belonged. And until recently, I didn't even know he existed." A ripple of murmurs runs through the audience. Jackson steadies himself, voice thick with emotion. Jackson, softly. I made fun of someone because I thought we were different. But the truth is, we're not. My own family faced the same kind of hate I was spreading. And if I had known that sooner, maybe I would have thought twice. The auditorium is silent. Even Ryan looks stunned. Malik, from the back of the room, gives a small nod. A new beginning. After the assembly, Jackson walks through the hallways, feeling lighter. Malik catches up with him, leaning against the lockers. Malik, grinning. Not bad, Carter. Jackson, playfully. Yeah? You think so? Malik, don't let it go to your head. They share a laugh, a real one this time. Not at someone's expense, but at how far things have come. For the first time in his life, Jackson feels like he's moving towards something better. The camera pans to the shoebox, now resting on Jackson's desk. A symbol of everything he's learned and everything he's still discovering. The screen fades to black. Looking back, a few months later, the seasons have changed. Spring has arrived, bringing warm sunlight and fresh beginnings. Jackson sits in his bedroom, the shoebox still on his desk. But this time it's open. The letters, the photographs, the memories, they're no longer hidden away. They're a part of him now. He flips through an old black and white photograph of his great-grandfather, Henry Carter, in his military uniform. Jackson runs a finger over the worn edges, feeling a deep sense of connection. He thinks back to who he was just a short time ago, and the change is undeniable. He isn't the same person. He doesn't want to be. There's a knock on the door. His mother, Emily, peeks in. Emily, soft smile. You all right? Jackson nods, setting the photo down. Jackson, thoughtful. Yeah, just thinking. Emily steps inside, sitting on the edge of his bed. She watches him for a moment, sensing the shift in her son. Emily, you've come a long way, Jackson. Jackson exhales, rubbing the back of his neck. Jackson, soft chuckle. Yeah, I guess I have. He glances back at the shoebox. Jackson, continuing. I just wish I had known sooner. Emily, gently. Well, now you do. And that means you can do something about it. Jackson absorbs her words. He nods, a quiet determination settling in. Building new bridges. At school, things are different. Jackson isn't just coasting through anymore. He's aware now. Aware of the words he uses, the way he treats people, the history that shaped him. And most importantly, he's aware of the responsibility that comes with that knowledge. In history class, the teacher, Mr. Ramirez, assigns a research project. Students groan, but Jackson is already writing something down. When Malik glances over, raising an eyebrow, Jackson smirks. Malik, teasing. Don't tell me you're actually excited about schoolwork. Jackson, grinning. Let's just say, I've got a good topic in mind. Cut to later, Jackson stands at the front of the classroom, presenting his project on the 761st Tank Battalion. He speaks with confidence, passion. His classmates listen, really listen. Even Ryan, arms crossed in the back, doesn't have anything to say. Maybe he's thinking. Maybe, just like Jackson once did, he's starting to question things, too. The last letter. That evening, Jackson sits on the porch, a letter in his hands. The final letter from his great-grandfather, one he hadn't read yet. He unfolds the fragile paper and begins to read. To the Carter who finds this. I don't know where life has taken you. I don't know the world you're living in now. But if you're reading this, it means you cared enough to look. That means something. I lived through war. I fought for a country that didn't always love me back. But I still fought. Because I believed in something bigger than myself. I believed that one day, things would be different. Maybe that day is today. Maybe you are part of the change. If so, I'm proud of you. Never forget who you are. And never stop fighting for what's right. Henry Carter. Jackson exhales shakily, closing his eyes. The weight of those words settles deep in his chest. When he opens his eyes again, they're filled with something new. Purpose. Leaving a legacy. In the final scene, Jackson walks to school, but this time, his steps are different. More confident. More sure. He spots Malik by the basketball court and jogs over, dribbling a ball between his hands. Jackson, smirking. One-on-one. Were you scared? Malik laughs, shaking his head. You're not ready for this, Carter. They start the game, laughing, talking. The past isn't forgotten, but it's no longer a wall between them. It's just a lesson, a hard one, but a necessary one. The camera pans out, the sound of the basketball echoing against the pavement. The sun shines overhead, and for the first time in a long time, Jackson feels like he's exactly where he's supposed to be. The screen fades to black. A quote appears on the screen as the music swells. History is not there for you to like or dislike. It is there for you to learn from. And if it offends you, even better, because then you are less likely to repeat it.